I consider toe hooking to be one of my superpowers. Nearly every double-digit boulder I've done has involved a toe hook at some point, partly because I can use my toe hooks in the same way that some people use heel hooks, and partly because I just don't find the toe hook to be the crux that others do. And this is largely because I spent an entire training season focused on learning how to use toe hooks because I was terrible at using them and even worse at spotting them. And over that season, I learned exactly how technical toe hooking can actually be. And as I was making our Atomic Elements of Climbing movement course, I wanted to focus on the general principles of movement, but I knew I'd eventually dive deeper into individual techniques as well, and I'm starting here with toe hooking because it's a technique that I think is very often misunderstood in two principal ways. And these days, I hear a lot of people lament the fact that they just aren't strong enough to do difficult toe hooks, and they end up doing these tibialis workouts that ultimately do very little, if anything, to help. So in this video, I want to first explain what those two misunderstandings are, how this confusion leads to toe hooks seeming harder and more like sorcery than other techniques, and finally, I'll break down a few toe hook boulders so that you can see exactly how to apply better toe hooking techniques. Let's get into it. Okay, so the first misconception comes from the name. It might seem strange to start here, but if you're taking the name literally, it might just be throwing you off. Look at knee bars. I've seen dozens of climbers try to use their knees during a knee bar because they took the name literally. If it were called a thigh bar, then maybe they would have gotten it quicker. It's the same with toe hooking, though if we called it a dorsum hook, nobody would have a clue what we were talking about. But I see people literally try to hook their toes onto things. What you should be doing is more of a foot hook than a toe hook. And the second misconception comes in what you actually do when you're using a toe hook. And this example isn't particularly difficult, but if you aren't well versed at toe hooks, then having all of these options for placement makes it easy to get wrong. Anytime I see people fail on this toe hook, they act as if they want to go straight to those tib raises. They say they aren't strong enough. That isn't true. You're probably just going about it the wrong way. Now, I'm not saying that making your shin muscle stronger is a bad thing, but in my estimation, it's rarely the problem. Most people don't need to get stronger, they need to get better. They need a better understanding of the move itself. Now, if I asked you which one of these techniques toe hooks are more closely related to, heel hooking or drop kneeing, you'd probably say heel hooking. And in some ways, you're right. But if we look at the why of choosing to use a toe hook, I might have to go with drop knees as the closer relative. Here's why. Heel hooks are really versatile and are regularly used two distinctly different ways, for stability and for propulsion. Drop knees are usually used for stability, to put your body into a specific space and hold it there while you move your hand. And this is the same for toe hooks. They're usually for stability, holding your body in position while you move an arm or your other leg. And as such, they're rarely about applying more force, particularly when learning them. And just a note here, in the situations that heel hooks are used for stability, they're often interchangeable with toe hooks. For me personally, I nearly always choose the toe hook over a difficult heel hook when used in this more static manner, but that's me personally. That doesn't make it better for everyone. Now, it's this versatility of heel hooks and the fact that we think toe hooks and heel hooks are so similar is where many people get tripped up. Heel hooks are much more common, and when using a heel hook to move, we're actively pulling with the hamstring. It's a movement we've gotten comfortable with. So naturally, we place a toe hook and actively try to curl our toes into extension and pull with them. We flex hard at the ankle, start pulling with the hamstring, and the toe hook holds for like 2 seconds and feels like it takes absolutely everything we have to keep it on. Why? Well, maybe it's because you're actively trying. Let's get into how to improve your toe hooking. We've already established that toe hooks are usually used for stability, and if you're in a scenario where you need a way to keep your body from falling away, maybe because of a really slopey or tiny hold or whatever, a toe hook can be really helpful. And this doesn't need to be on super steep terrain. Now let's talk about placement. Some people will tell you that you're looking for surface area contact. The more the better. And that's sort of true. But it might not work how you think it does. It's more like you're trying to fit two puzzle pieces together. Now your shoe has a different profile. Different shoes have different profiles. What you're looking to do is fit the profile of your shoe onto the hold. As with any other foot techniques, some shoes are going to work better than others for certain toe hooks. To be perfectly honest, there are several toe hooks that I've done every time in these, the Evolve Agros, that I've literally never done in another shoe. And obviously I haven't tried all shoes, but I know what works for me when I need it. I'm not saying these are better than your shoes. Now, this Flying Ninja toe hook on the Giving Tree is a great example of that. I've never been able to do it with a different shoe. Now, however, I don't want to oversell this idea. The vast majority of the time, it's not the shoes that matter. It's the skill and how you fit the shoe to the rock. The right shoe just allows me to apply the skill in a very limited, very specific context. But while we're on the subject, wouldn't a shoe with no toe bump maximize the surface contact and be better? Well, sometimes maybe, but probably not as often as you think. The toe bump can actually be pretty helpful as long as you aren't overemphasizing it. Number one, it creates this concave space in what would otherwise be a mostly convex surface. Number two, if the toe hook is shallow, it might become the dominant surface area. But don't get caught thinking that the toe bump is what makes all the difference for every toe hook, because frankly, if it doesn't have to be shallow, deeper can often be a lot better, even if it means, and it often does, toe hooking all the way up on the laces or the Velcro. If you overemphasize that bump in scenarios where you can get a lot more surface area on an appropriate surface, you might just be making it harder. Put simply, and this won't be the last time I say this, experiment with the placement, shallow or deeper, swiveled from one side to the other, and see what works for you. As you find different placements working, you'll get better at recognizing what you need to do. But what about the rest of your leg? What are you doing with that? Well, I'm almost never actively pulling. It happens, of course, and we'll talk about that. But most of the time, we want it there for stability. Place it, stabilize it, and then move the rest of my body around it. Straight legs, if the geometry works, is best, which means lowering your hips out to allow for the straightening, and to let gravity pull against the toe. If it's a closer toe hook, you might need to bend a little at the knee to hold tension. And I find this easiest if I rotate my leg internally, sort of dropping my knee in. Even then, usually, I try to hold that tension stable and move the rest of my body around it. Now, something to consider here, because I said I'm not actively pulling, is that difficult toe hooks are rarely just about dangling from a toe like you would in a bat hang. More often, they require some level of compression, some force opposing the toe hook. Easier toe hooks can let gravity do this, or a bicycle can do it. But difficult toe hooks often require you to compress between the toe hook and the opposite hand. In these situations, it might help to imagine that you're trying to pull the two holds together. The strongest way to do this is to contract at the core like you would for a hollow body. And this kind of compression can stabilize you and allow you to move the other foot or hand freely. Now, back to the idea of lowering your hips out. Particularly when it's something like matching hand-foot with a toe hook, this part is key. The toe hook is not going to feel great until you lower yourself out from it and find that really stable position. What you do with the other leg might be a big help with that. Sometimes, opposing the toe hook with a bicycle works really well to allow you to let go and lean into it. And sometimes dropping a leg off and letting it help pull your weight onto the toe will give it the opposition it needs. These moments can feel really unstable and will take some getting used to in order to anticipate where you'll need to get to and how fast you can do it. You'll only be able to anticipate it if you practice it, and we'll get to that. But what if that stable position is great for staying on the wall, but isn't really helping us get where we're going? Now, assuming you've created stability through your core and compressing, then oftentimes we can advance the stable position by using the other leg to sort of kickstand it. And we don't really need a great foothold for this, just a smear will work fine. In fact, the position is far more important than how good the foothold is. Find the position and then use the foot that works for it, not the other way around. What you're looking for is the advantageous position that will allow you to reach the next hold. Now, if possible, making a sort of tripod with both legs straight is ideal, and that'll give you the option to adjust with your kickstand leg, or by lowering your hips out, or bending the pulling arm, or just pivoting at the shoulder. But even doing this, we're usually just moving through relatively stable positions for that brief moment that we're reaching, and our lower body tends to make very little movement throughout. Occasionally, though, you'll need to use a toe hook and actively pull with that leg to make a move. It's more rare, but it certainly happens. Now, in this scenario, I'd suggest you experiment with ways to pull without changing the positioning of the toe too much. Usually, this is going to revolve around internally rotating your leg and pulling with your hip. Again, like a drop knee. And usually it happens when you'd rather have a heel hook there, but just don't quite have the reach to get it there. The toe offers you quite a bit of extra reach over an engaged heel hook. Which brings me to an important point. When the spot where you're considering a heel or toe is distant, it might take more effort to pull yourself toward it enough to place a heel, but the toe hook might be easier to place. And if you're traveling away from the heel or toe anchor position, then a toe hook can do a couple of important things. First, it can give you more reach over an engaged heel hook. Second, it's easier and less violent to release. Now, quick tip if you're in this scenario where it's hard to release the toe or the heel. If you can reach back and find any kind of hold, no matter how terrible, to oppose the stabilizing hand, almost acting like a replacement for the heel or toe, then the release will often be easier. Now, when you're using the toe or heel for propulsion, then oftentimes the heel will give you more versatility and distance. But if the toe is easier to place and can get you the distance, then it might still be the more efficient solution. Now, I want to break down 3 of the boulders that we've been seeing and break down the different techniques so that you can maybe get a better understanding of how and when to use them. First, this toe hook match is a fairly easy one, provided you get the placements right. If I place this toe hook elsewhere, there are a couple of issues. Number 1, it doesn't oppose the direction I'm going to lean, so it's harder to engage. Number 2, it doesn't quite fit the profile of my shoe as well as the correct, for me anyway, placement. And then when I cross my feet and match, I'm leaning in a different direction, so I purposely choose a surface that opposes that. I've seen a lot of people try to get their toe bump into this divot, but ultimately, it's just so much less surface area and it's not quite angled away enough to be opposition. So the flatter surface ends up being the better choice. Now, another reason this toe hook isn't very difficult is because you can place it with only a slight bend in the leg, and you can quickly get to straight-legged. Then, my hips stay sagged away in order to oppose it and place the next toe hook from a straight leg position. Next, this toe hook is a little more difficult. It seems like it just doesn't give you enough surface area to match hand-foot on. But here's where the toe bump really becomes useful. And maybe this is the rare occasion when it's actually a toe hook. I'm using the toe bump here to hook on the edge of this sharper hold. Now, also in this case, the tension in this leg is a little harder to hold for this particular move. I can't really release it and straighten the leg because the right handhold is oriented in such a way that if I allow my body to move too far right, it's going to get much harder really fast. So I have to lock my lower body down to hold myself to the left until I can reach and oppose that right hand with a better left hand. That allows me to relax the toe hook leg so that I can adjust it. And then in order to get the leg straight so that I can get more stable and move to the next foothold, I need to first flag the other leg away to wait and oppose the toe hook. Then I can step up onto the foot and keep moving. Now finally, this boulder was set specifically as a toe hook trainer. Not a strength trainer, but a skill trainer. And there are a lot of things that happen here that are important for using toe hooks well. First, I place it where it's going to fit that concave space really well and oppose my lean. Next, how I weight that initial placement. When I try to keep this left foothold, it's a bit of an off-balance crash into the next handhold, which isn't a great hold. But if I flag this left foot out and kickstand it against just the vertical plywood, it's a much more stable move. And then, because I need to bump my right hand higher, I kickstand again, higher, just on the plywood. And this allows me to advance my torso and create a lockdown tripod from which I can reach the next hold in a stable way. Now it gets much more advanced. I have to release the toe hook and replace it on a different part of the hold. It's higher and it's more advantageous for the direction I now need to pull. And I could use a heel here. It's going to take more energy to place because I'm going to have to pull myself further to the right to place it, but it would certainly work. However, for me, the toe, because I've practiced using them, is more efficient. So I toe hook and then use it like a drop knee to help pull me toward the hold I'm going for. Now, to get better at all these things, you're going to have to practice them. Don't wait for the toe hook boulders or for the setters to put up the perfect toe hook crux. Instead, substitute toe hooks whenever you find a stability type heel hook or a drop knee. See if they work. And as you get better at recognizing when a toe hook will work for you, try making up hard versions of that. How do different holds change how you place the toe hook? How do different orientations of the holds change how you compress or turn your hips? If you have a home wall, make sure to have underclings and side pulls, or you're setting yourself up to not have many toe hook opportunities. But once you do have those opportunities, explore them. You can't hack your way to these techniques. They take time, experience, and awareness and intention. If you want to go deeper into learning about and assessing your movement, check out this video about our Atomic Elements of Climbing movement course, or this playlist with more videos just like this one.